morning, everyone. Welcome to Software and Configuration Deployment for Distributed IT Teams with Chad Jacobson and Jennifer Johnson. They're going to go ahead and get started. If you have questions as they come to you, please open up the JNUC app and use the session Q&A. Upvote questions, ask questions, and we'll get a chance to go through them at the end. Thank you.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. I'm Chad Jacobson.
Jennifer Johnson.
There we go. I work for Iowa State University, but my particular department, I'm in music and theater, and I work for the College of LAS.
And I'm Jennifer. I work for our central IT unit. So our central ITS unit is as we call it there. And this is my second time presenting at JNUC. Last time I was here virtually in 2021, so it's good to see people in person.
So a little bit about what we're going to do today. We have a really cool title. This is a very, like, we're in academia. Iowa State's a very academic place, and so our title is very academic. But what I would like to call it, what we've really been thinking about in the past month or two, this is about how to better herd cats. Just real quickly, how many folks here work in higher ed?
That's a high number.
Yeah, for people, yeah. So I would imagine you would probably agree that working in higher ed, there's a lot of cat herding, trying to get everybody to go in the same direction. And today, we're going to do just a little bit of a review and a discussion of what we have at Iowa State and kind of what we have learned and adjusted with. And sort of the last half of the presentation, the specifics on what we did to do that.
Yep, perfect.
So briefly, Iowa State University, to give you background, we're in Ames, Iowa. We have 7 colleges. We have 30,000 students. We have 15,000 faculty and staff. A few interesting little tidbits. We hold the record for the Guinness record for the world's largest Rice Krispie treat, which was 2,500 pounds in 2001. And a slightly less important fact, we were one of the birthplaces of computing, one of the first computers. We don't really have a top-down structure at Iowa State. So we don't have the same luxuries as private industry that they do in their orgs. I mentioned herding cats, which is very much what it's like. But we have found that that's pretty normal for higher ed. It's a normal challenge. We've done consultations with other institutions, and we keep coming back to these same sort of things. We're very siloed. Maybe there's a central IT, but there are a lot of different groups. And so anyway, that's kind of what we're here to talk about and one of the big challenges that we have. So we have our central IT. We also have our college units, or even sometimes departmental units. We have 6,500 Macs, over 3,000 mobile devices. We have a lot of one-to-one for faculty, not a lot of one-to-one for students. So there's a few areas that maybe we'll do an iPad or a MacBook Pro, but usually there's not a lot of student one-to-one. Think a lot of labs, a lot of research, and a lot of faculty and staff. We have 54 Jamf sites, which we're going to talk about. If that scares anybody, that's it gets worse.
It sometimes scares us.
Yeah. And a note that for us, it's a state requirement. It's a state policy that we have to have our our laptops encrypted. So why do we have that many Jamf sites? First off, we have been Jamf customers for 10 years. And when we started, you had to roll an on-prem, or at least for us, we had to roll an on-prem stand-up server. And really what we thought was that you had to, it didn't make a lot of sense for each individual site or each individual department to roll up their own Jamf server. The amount of work and the expense of doing that was really just too much for us. And so we made an early decision that we were going to have a centralized Jamf server that we would manage and we would run, and would try to like split off as much as of the individual site work or the departmental work that we could. Sort of our org structure, we're going to go into this a little bit. We have our enterprise admins, that's Jennifer and I.
And Shane, who's
and
back,
Shane.
At home in Ames.
Yep, I was going to mention he's our designated survivor back in Ames. We have our unit admins, and we have our site admins. So what we do as enterprise admins, we are in charge, of course, of the Jamf instance. We will package a lot of the common good software. We maintain a global set of self-service policies and global configs. We handle the institutional issues. We have an Apple Enterprise AppleCare contract, which is really useful. And we do a lot of training. We do a lot of communications. We also did work on privileges. Our communication, we hold bi-weekly meetings. Did I skip a slide? Sorry.
No, you didn't skip
Yeah,
a slide.
sorry, anyway.
This is about our unit admins.
Yeah, so our unit admins, we have bi-weekly meetings with them. These are sort of the heads of the colleges. These are heads of large departments. They report the issues back to us. They have permissions to add and modify, do all the printers, the packages, the scripts that you would expect. But they only have access to their site, and we're going to keep coming back to this. So the enterprise admins, we have access to everything. We're sort of the root admins. At this point down, the unit admins only have access to their own world. And the idea of this, and this is why we're talking about silos and herding cats, is you're trying to limit the access that these folks have to the other sites. So somebody in biology can't impact somebody in econ, or somebody here can't make a bad policy that's going to impact so-and-so, or the software licensing. I don't want to call it about trust, but it's just about trying to keep that siloing, doing the best good that we can for the most people.
Yeah, to give people the autonomy to do things in their site so they're not trying to impact others inadvertently.
So our unit admins, one of the big things for us is they also have to have the Jamf 200 certification. So they had to have passed their CCT, because they're going to have access to Jamf admin. And as hopefully we all know, Jamf is a pretty flat surface in terms of an org structure. So passing that CCT, passing the 200 level, that means hopefully we can trust you to see all the other policies and to change all the packages and do all the work. Below that, we have our site admins. And these are day-to-day ops, end user support. These are the technicians who are in the department. Any and all of us can do any of these jobs, but their Jamf access is they really only have access to their site. They can't do any packaging. They have to go to one of us or one of the unit admins for packaging. But they can do software deployment. They can make policies in their own sites. They can purchase apps, and we'll talk about that in a minute. And one of their things is to inform us when there are changes, particularly in staff changes. If there are new IT folks, it's up to us to help train and onboard them. We also have another group that we won't really talk about, but it's essentially an auditor group. And our student technicians, we'll give them that, or managers, so that they can do reporting. They can poke around and see what's going on, but they don't necessarily have access to change or do anything. Yep. So, how does this all work? Most site admins have one site. So, if you're the technician for, again, biology IT, or a couple of technicians, you might only have access to biology IT. Some of our site admins, they might have access to multiple sites. So if they maybe have a geographic district or area that they're supporting, they might have access to a number, if they're a backup for somebody who is out. We, on the back end, we manage everything with AD groups, and we, the enterprise admins, control that. So we don't have groups within groups. We don't let our individual departments decide that they just get to move somebody in. We control all of that access. On the device management side, in ASM, we have locations and MDM servers for each site. We have managed Apple IDs for everybody, so that they can go in and buy apps and books and do VPP. And the expectation is that the site admins handle the actual content. They purchase the apps, they deploy the apps. That's really completely up to them. And they can do that with their own financing and everything. So since everybody can see everything, and Jamf is a flat surface, we really try to keep our naming consistent. Our packages, printers, etc., scripts, we've tried to prefix everything. So my home department, it's going to be LAS-music. For example, ISU or full JSS for the enterprise things. This is how we can quickly look at the JSS and know whose policies are what, whose packages are what, who owns them, air quotes. In our packaging, this is something that we struggled with, but we really have gotten much better at it, is trying to get all of our different folks to actually fill out the notes in the packaging, so that way when we're trying to clean up the JSS, or we can actually see who did what and when. So we require that in the notes. When was the package created? Where did it come from? One of the other big pain points for us is there was a lot of replication, where folks maybe couldn't find a certain package, and so they would make their own. I hate to use Google Chrome, because everybody uses Google Chrome as an example, like for like all IT, but we don't need 50 packages of Google Chrome. And Jennifer's going to speak to that here in just a little bit. We've gotten much better about that, but that was definitely a pain point over the last decade of, wow, there's 15 Firefoxes. Which one do you choose? So a little bit about our lifecycle management. This is definitely, I think, a strength for Iowa State. Our procurement is via our on-campus bookstore, and we call it TechSite. And we're required to use our TechSite. We can't go outside of that to purchase Apple devices. It's really kind of cool and maybe a little creepy if you go into our purchasing portal and you go to CDWG or B&H, the Apple stuff is just missing. Like, it's already nerfed out of the list. It's really kind of cool. So you have to buy all of our Apple tech through our on-campus bookstore, asterisk phones, and that's a whole nother story. But what happens is when we make that purchase, the bookstore notifies the enterprise admins that things are ready to be assigned to a site. And then we go into ASM, and we will assign them to that site. Now, as I mentioned earlier, each site has their own setup in ASM. So once we put it into the site, it's going to show up in their DEP and the pre-stage, and they can move it around inside the pre-stage if they'd like. So they then turn on the device and enroll. So during the sort of operational life cycle, it's enrolled with normal ops. It can be redeployed and moved. We do a lot of pre-stages. Some sites will only have one pre-stage that everything auto-assigns into. Other sites, what they'll do is perhaps the labs will have a pre-stage so that they can work on lab machines and redeploy them. Sometimes they'll have a faculty and staff pre-stage. They might have a dozen pre-stages. Jennifer, how many pre-stages do you have for central IT? You guys have a lot of computers.
Way too many, probably like 70 or something like that for all the different academic departments we support.
But again, those are pre-stages, right? They automatically just populate in there, and you guys can move them around. They're all in one site for you. So there's a lot less duplication of effort. Kind of other notes, we use the SCCM plugin still. That's been deprecated, and we're looking at how to get rid of that or how to move on from that. And then we have Power BI dashboards that Jennifer has put together.
Yep, the link there is to the GitHub repo from my talk from 2 years ago. Yeah, 2021, 2 years ago.
End of life, again, this is like a good thing for us. Everything has to go to our surplus department. It's a state law, and so it's really easy to kind of hit them with the band hammer of like, you have to go through surplus, and we have a really good relationship with our surplus department. So site admins, they can notify us. We will delete them from Jamf, or they can delete them from Jamf and unassign them. We unassign them in ASM. We get weekly reports of when things are sold, either back to campus or off campus, and that's when we can release them. Additionally, we will do a twice yearly unmanage and remove from Jamf. We have a clever name for them.
Yeah, we refer to them to the Thanos snap.
The Thanos snap. So if a device has been unmanaged or if it's been sold, at twice a year, we will go in and...
Yeah, the delete one is the Thanos snap, and then we're clever. We came up with Tony snap for the unmanaged stuff. So we speak in that parlance. It really hits on the IT people. They really like it.
Yeah, the Avengers reference is good. But it's nice, though, because then we know that the devices are gone. There's the security element of that. And additionally, we pay less in licensing because we're getting rid of the devices every few months or every 6 months or so. So as enterprise admins, we spend a lot of time communicating. We mentioned the bi-weekly meeting that we have with our unit admins. We have campus-wide meetings 2 to 3 times a year. Oftentimes at those campus meetings, we'll have folks from Apple or other specialties come in and speak to our group. That's most of the IT folks on campus. We'll do campus-wide workshops. We document stuff that's unique to ISU's Apple setup. What we mean by that is, again, if there's common documentation from Apple, we'll just punt them to Apple's KBs. Or if there's Jamf training, we'll punt them to Jamf. But the specific stuff at Iowa State, we document pretty well and pretty clearly. Another part of our sort of communication stuff, and we've gotten a lot of great feedback on this, is we have a Jamf training site. So I mentioned that we have our production server and we have a dev server, but on our production server, on all the sites, everybody has read access to a training site. It's the last one on the list. And so one of the things we have, as you can imagine, our site admins, our unit admins, we have a wide range of experience. Folks need to see what a best practice is. What does this policy look like? Or what is this config? What should it look like if I needed to do it individually for us? And we handle a lot of that globally, but we want them to be able to see what a best practice is. And that's what our training site is. It's a read-only area that everybody can see, and we put the best examples in there because they can't see into other sites otherwise. We also do welcome visits to our new IT staff. I don't know what everybody else here does in higher ed, and I think we're a little unique in our area, but we try to reach out to everybody within the first couple days or weeks of their employment. Let's sit down with the Jamf enterprise admins, and we're going to spend 2 or 3 hours talking through what we do. Things to watch out for: welcome to Iowa State, here's how we purchase things for your Macs, here's how you're going to get rid of your Macs, here are the unique things, here's are the KBs. We'll spend a couple hours talking to them. And then last, of course, we have email lists and Teams channels. The slide speaks for itself. So we've given you a brief overview. One of our problems that we've had, some of the lessons that we've learned: too many sites. So we're at 54 sites now. We had many more sites previously. At one point, our biology IT was split into 9 sites.
Yeah, we migrated 9 sites into 1 site, and that was a nice day we did that.
And the problem with having so many sites, when things are so siloed, there's a big duplication and replication of effort for the site admins. And there's a lot of chances for things to go wrong, right? How many Google Chrome policies do you need? You don't need 54 or 64 or 70. So we really try to limit the amount of sites. That's the things that we've learned. It was really easy to prop up a new site. Hey, we have a new lab. Let's put up a new site for a new lab. We have a new research area. Let's put up a new site for them. So we've really been trying to consolidate sites. That's been a big thing for us. And again, those pre-stages that we were talking about, the device enrollment stuff, has really helped with that. Some other lessons learned: Jamf and Apple work really well. So a lot of our technicians don't, it's like a muscle that atrophies. If they only have to renew a cert every so often, or if they only have to go in the Jamf UI so often, they start to forget what the best practices are, because again, they don't have to touch it, it just works. It worked 6 months ago, they're able to deploy stuff, their faculty are happy. So that's definitely been an issue for us, is to kind of keep that going. Originally, we had everybody doing their own VPP token maintenance, and when we set this up, everybody had their own site. And it was sort of, hey, this is your, have fun, you take care of it, we won't do anything. And that really doesn't work out. We were spending more time on VPP tokens because people don't do it that often, and even though it's documented, folks would have troubles with it. And so we were answering more tickets about how to fix VPP tokens than it was just for us to do them all. So a lot of the token stuff, we're taking on more and more, which is, of course, what this discussion is about today. Another issue that we have is, it's called moving critical mass, but it's like trying to steer the Titanic at times. I don't know if you guys have this issue as well, but we find that when we communicate something, we have to communicate it multiple times. It could take up to a year from the initial onset of something to get to the end where people are listening. And even then, you'll still have some stragglers that didn't quite pick it up. I know we have some Apple folks in here. Like, oftentimes the Apple folks will talk about something, and then 3 months later, we'll talk about something. And then 9 months later after that, by the way, we're turning off that thing. We're onto the new thing. You should be doing the new thing. And it just takes that long. You have to communicate it again and again and again. So that's that last point. Communicating with clarity and priority. I imagine everybody has a relationship with Apple in the room. There's a lot of great information from them. But what we do as enterprise admins is we really have to filter that down. Filter it down to the 3 or 4 things that our site admins who are supporting Windows machines, they're supporting faculty, and everything's on fire. And did I mention everything's on fire? We have to suss that down to the 3 or 4 key things you need to know from Apple about this new OS release, about this new functionality in Jamf. We really have to distill that down and kind of get the noise away. So yeah, challenges, again, that flat structure of Jamf. We've chosen sites. I think if people are used to the Active Directory side, the Microsoft way of doing things can be a hierarchy, and we don't really have that. It's an all or nothing. You're in your site or not. Issues that we've had as enterprise admins is sometimes the reporting and scoping, or reporting in particular, can be difficult. We've had some rare issues with bugs in the past with sites, where sometimes a smart group or a configuration profile will wander. I don't know if that's the right word for it.
Talk outside its gates and wander over to someone else.
If something's set to scope all, there might be a brief moment where that scope all becomes the entire site, or the entire server, as opposed to just the site. We haven't had that problem for a long time, but that's something that we have gotten burnt on before. I'm trying to think of what else to speak to here. There's a big pressure on us to get it right, and I think everybody in the room feels that. We've taken on more of the responsibility. And Jennifer's going to speak to this here next, but we are doing more globally, and we're offering more policies. And so there's a real pressure on us now
to not screw it up for everyone
to stick the
else.
landing.
With
With that, why don't you talk about some of the things that we've done?
Yeah. So we refer to things that we do at the full JSS level as global offerings. So you'll hear us use the term global quite frequently. I don't know where that name came from. It's just something we've been using. So some of the things that Chad has already talked about is what kind of global offerings do we offer for our site admins? And the main things that we're offering is global packages, the Google Chromes of the world, the Microsoft Office and things, so we're not having 50 copies of the same thing. We don't want this whole duplicate effort thing we're really trying to not have happen. Same thing with scripts. We also offer some global scripts so that everyone kind of can identify with a similar problem. And then we get into like the policy stuff. So we kind of have two separate policies that we reference. The first one is what we're calling global self-service in the whole global scheme of things. And these are things that are available to anyone that's on a Jamf managed Mac. So if you're in biology, you're in ITS, you're over in econ, you're in music or wherever, you are always getting these apps. And these are things that us on the enterprise team, we manage for all of campus. The new thing that we started doing was global custom trigger policies, and I'll get into how the GitHub Actions and stuff works with that. But that's just another quick way for our site admins to get the latest Google Chrome and just reference it in their policy and just be done with it. We also started doing global config profiles. That wasn't something we had been doing. We just started doing that last year. And again, we're trying to reduce this duplicate effort. We're trying to reduce these opportunities where someone tried to roll their own global their own config profile on their own site, and something happened, something blew up, didn't get the expected result from their end user. We're now handling it on the enterprise side, trying to figure out, troubleshoot that.
Screen recording is a great example.
Yeah, the screen recording stuff, that's like bog simple. People just want to sit down at their Mac and be able to screen share in Teams. Like, we wanted to solve that for the rest of campus.
Globally, everybody gets it.
Yep. And then the other things are kind of like these specialized installs and configurations. We just started rolling out Microsoft Defender on our campus. And if you've done Defender deployments, you'll understand that there's like a bajillion config profiles associated with that. And the policies to get stuff out there has been really challenging, so we really didn't want to put that on our site admins. There again, to duplicate it 60 times or however many things. So we now handle that at the global level. And then you might also be familiar, if you're a state institution, with a certain app that a lot of people wanted blocked in our governor's office. So we took care of that for our folks as well. And maybe there'll be more of that, who knows. To give you more details on the global self-service policies, this is a user experience thing for our end users. We have a central IT help desk. We call it Solution Center. So we have people calling into that all the time. It would be really great to just say, yes, you will always be offered Google Chrome. If you're not being offered Google Chrome or you see an error in self-service, that's the indication something's wrong and you need to talk to your local IT person. So what ended up happening, and this goes back to 2016, actually went back and looked through the logs. We started making these global self-service policies available. And we found some people were offering apps and some weren't, and so it was very confusing if someone calls in and they're like, I don't know what I have, or I might have duplicate things where I have 3 copies of Google Chrome. Which one is the one I should pick in self-service? I don't know. And so this was, again, the duplicate effort thing that we're trying to avoid. So all sites are included by default. But we can have a process to opt out. So like if you have a lab environment, for example, and you don't want people installing stuff through self-service, we can help you opt out of that. And we all retain these standard naming conventions and descriptions and everything, so it looks really nice in the self-service when you're browsing that. We have about 40 titles in there right now. We're continuing to add stuff. And yeah, the duplicate effort thing. Man, I'm just like a broken record, duplicate effort. I hate it. So to give you an idea of what our self-service policies look like, we have a category there that's selected that says ISU Global, so all our global self-service policies, guess what? They're categorized in that category. They might be categorized under internet or reference or whatever, but they will always show up in there. And they always include the title name, the recent version, and again with the description. I didn't use Google Chrome in this example. I used WebEx. I don't know why, but here we are. So that way, people know that it's coming from our enterprise team. It's not coming from their local IT people. They can talk to their local IT team if they have problems, but they know it's an institutional thing, that we're doing it for everyone. So global config profiles. Again, this is the common things that we saw people were having to do and maybe not getting completely right.
It can be difficult.
It can be difficult because it's like some areas want one thing but others don't, and then they might come into something later that they didn't really anticipate. So we started doing global config profiles back in the fall of 2022. And we're getting a lot of calls from our site admins basically saying, my end user is seeing these prompts for accessibility and I don't know what this means, what do I do? And so rather than spend all this time training people, like, why don't we just do it for you? And then that way it's just done. So in a lot of cases, even with the config profiles that people were doing, it was kind of like something went wrong, and we're trying to avoid that too on our side. Very selfish of us to want to avoid that, but you know. So there again, we don't want to do stuff that's restrictive. It's just more of ease of access. We don't really focus on things that are locking down things in the environment. That's for the site admins to figure out how they want to do that. So right now we have 7 macOS and 1 iOS config profile. You can probably guess what the iOS config profile is. With the global configuration profiles, these are opt-in. As compared to our self-service policies, you have to opt in to get these. Because some folks might have already rolled out their own config profiles, and if we're duplicating that, then what's the term, undefined behavior might occur. So we want people to be able to review that before they decide, yep, I want to be in on your game here at enterprise level. So we want to make sure that they were covered. And then with our config profiles, we all keep track of those with change management in our GitHub repo. So there again, we have a source of truth. We know what's happening with them. And that's been pretty awesome, especially when someone asks me what they're doing. So here's the game part, automation. I love this word. I did a presentation about automation once, and now I can't get enough of it, I guess.
I was excited this morning to see notifications, which I'm sure you're going to speak to.
Yeah, right? I know, it's kind of fun. It's like, oh, the thing works, wow.
The thing worked last night.
It's like Rubric Gold Machine. You're like, hey, this is awesome. So one of the things that we found out was our software packaging, like Chad had mentioned, that we had a lot of duplicate things. People were kind of confused about what was going on. And we're trying to solve this problem of not having us do stuff manually. Like on our enterprise side, we were making packages manually. And I'm sure I can see a lot of people are like, ugh, that's terrible. I don't want to do that. And with all our naming conventions all broken, we had people doing manual work on our team. There's a lot of duplicate things, a lot of confusion. Like, let's solve this problem. Automation. So, fall of 2022, I think I hit a critical level where I was like, I don't want to do this. Let's do something cool. And basically, we originally came up with 3 goals, which was automate the software packaging, get it into Jamf, and notify. Because not only are we manually updating packages, we're also emailing people when we're doing this. And that's a lot of manual work, too. Nobody likes that. So, so if you're not aware of these products, I mentioned AutoPkg, Jamf Uploader. You might see a slide that says Jamf Upload. It's the same tool. if you're not familiar with these ideas, I'm not going to go over what they do. There's tons of good information out there that talks about these. There's one that they did at Mac Admins last year that was awesome, and I referenced that, so go check those out. So Jamf Uploader. One thing that when we were looking at doing Jamf Uploader was that it would be very difficult for us to continue with our process of overriding existing packages that we owned. Just the process through the API. Huzzah for JCDS 2.0. Maybe this will be cool now. And so we wanted to figure out how we could work around that limitation. And we also wanted to make sure that our packages maintained our same naming scheme as well. And so this is where we kind of started doing the global custom trigger policies. Because if we're a site admin, we don't want you using Google Chrome 1.13, blah, blah, blah. We want you to use the latest. How do we point you to the latest if I'm a site admin? So that's where that came into play. And then we also started doing not just global self-service policies attached to our Jamf Uploader stuff, but preview policies. Yes, another terminology. But there might be certain things that you don't want to deploy to all your clients. I'm trying to think of a really good, GitHub Desktop. You might not want your person in your admin office downloading GitHub Desktop for reasons. But you as a site admin might want to offer it, or you might want to know about it so that it's there. And of course the Teams notifications, because I hate writing emails. I want someone else to write emails for me. So with Jamf Uploader, again, with the global self-service policies, we're not using, if you go and read about Jamf Uploader, there'll be stuff in there that talks about how to create groups or automate group creation. We already have the groups made, so I'm not going to automatically create groups. You're asking, why do you have groups? We have some older devices in our environment, it's a nice way to say that, that might not support that version of software that we're running in our global policies. We don't want to make that available to people. That's how we use groups. And then preview is for our site admins. If they want to run something on they have an end user that comes to them and says, hey, I really want GitHub Desktop. We can have the site admin log into self-service for them and help them get it down. We have a lot of student techs that use that as well as just a way to get things on machines really quickly. And then the custom trigger, which is scoped to everything. So the only way you can invoke it is if you create a policy. That's how you get there. This is an example of Google Chrome, everyone's favorite. I have examples in GitHub, so don't worry, there'll be a link to that later. And we, of course, use Jamf recipes for that. The things I'll call out is that we don't want to continually update packages into Jamf, because that's bad. Bad things happen. Maybe with JCDS 2.0, maybe bad things won't happen, but right now, bad things happen. So we're not going to replace a package if it already exists in the Jamf environment. The bottom one is, there again, talking about that as well. So we're only uploading a package into Jamf if it hasn't seen it there before. And correspondingly, we only update the self-service policy if there's something new that's offered. So, finished product. Wow, this actually looks pretty good on here. So this is an example of our self-service policy, one of our globals. There again, brackets, full JSS, that's things that we own. We include the version number, we include some nice descriptive text, kind of saw that with WebEx. On the right-hand side is all our custom trigger policies, not all of them, but a good subset of those. And you'll notice that we use the moniker ISU, whatever. ISU Google Chrome, ISU Box Drive, whatever, so that when site admins are running their policies, they immediately know, hey, if I want to run Box Drive on all my client devices, this is how I get it. If I want to deploy it to those stations. If you're not familiar with custom trigger policies in the bottom right, it kind of tells you how to invoke those. So that's what we send to our site admins when they want to run that. So we got all this stuff set up on a local Mac Mini in my office, a 2014 Mac Mini in my office. It was holding weight. And you know, it's like, I don't want to maintain more stuff. I want to use some CI/CD workflows. I want to use GitHub Actions. And I want to not own hardware. I don't want to do that. So the nice thing with us is that we actually have a contract with GitHub Enterprise that came around right around this time, or at least I started paying attention right around this time. And that has some nice functionalities with GitHub Actions. So now we can run our CI/CD workflows and AutoPkg through that. And it also includes stuff with GitHub Secrets. So now we can pass credentials. So rather than having it sit on a Mac Mini where maybe some of the credentials are in clear text, now they're securely saved. Our security team loved that. So, GitHub Actions. Betsy, I saw you here earlier. What's up? She did a talk Tuesday about GitHub Actions and using Gusto's framework. And we're using the same framework. We did modify some of that for our needs. It includes stuff for Monkey. We don't use Monkey at Iowa State, so we kind of took some of that stuff out. And then we have some of our ISU repos that we use that are behind SSH and SSO, so we kind of had to work with that. And of course, using the GitHub secrets, so we could pass some of those credentials around. So, QR code is to the GitHub repo, or at least I hope it works. And so to give you an idea of kind of how this Actions is working, and by the way, the images and the slides are all in the GitHub repo, so don't feel like you need to zoom in on everything. That's kind of to give you an idea of how this workflow is working. It's not that drastically different than what Gusto has already posted, but just to give you a visualization of kind of how this works for us. So we have 2 servers. We have a Jamf Pro Dev and a Jamf Pro Prod environment. We currently run our GitHub Actions twice weekly. It just fired off last night, which every time it runs, I'm like, oh, this feels so good. I love it. Every time I saw it firing last night after the JNUC party, and I'm like, yes, this is great. I love it. And then we also have a dev instance, and so that's where we're doing all our testing environments and stuff like that. And then every time we need to update any recipes or anything like that, we have to update those trust overrides. We currently use change management. We use ServiceNow for our change management. So there again, we can kind of route that through there. We'll probably do some more integrations with ServiceNow in the future, but it really works well with that. And then as part of this, I kind of spearheaded this. So now I got to train other people on how to use what we've set up. The lottery truck, as I believe is your favorite term.
Lottery truck, if you get hit by the lottery truck.
If Jennifer gets hit by the lottery truck, somebody has to take this over. So it hasn't happened yet. Clapping. I don't want to get, I mean, lottery truck, it might, whatever.
It could be a good thing.
I ended up writing an admin guide that basically explains this whole process and everything. So that way, if somebody needs to step in and understand how everything's working, they can get right off to the races and set up their own local developer environment and start testing recipes and stuff for us. So that was pretty fun. So here's an example of a GitHub action running. We have an image at the top that's kind of explaining the process there again. And it'll give you an idea like, hey, Google Chrome actually had something new. We're going to go ahead and upload the package. We're going to add a doc item to Jamf. We're going to update those global self-service policies. We're going to update those custom trigger policies to the new thing. And then if you've ever run AutoPkg, there's a virus total analyzer that's at the bottom that says, yeah, this isn't malware, or at least we hope it's not malware. And that just runs. Currently, our runs are taking about an hour and a half, something like that. It kind of varies. And here again, this is the package view in Jamf. So you can get an idea. We kind of specialize. Again, we want the package name to begin with ISU. That way we know we own it. And of course, the version number and how it got there. It got there through Jamf Uploader. And there again with the, I think I've got the custom trigger policy out there. Nope, self-service policy and the custom trigger policy. So you've seen this before, and the same thing with the self-service description and the team's notification. So thanks for that. So we rolled this out in April 23 this year. We initially started with 16 titles, and we keep growing that. We're up to 34. I think even after I updated this, I think we're closer to 40. And it's been working really great. We've added probably way more than 200 packages to Jamf at this point, and everything's been awesome. The documentation and stuff, as we were going through this, the whole problem for us is we've been in Jamf customers for 10 years. We haven't purged anything from the Jamf server.
Very
there was like 1,600 packages or something like that. Maybe for some of you that's a low number, but for us it seemed like a very high number. And we wanted to purge some of that out just so that we're really getting to site admin saying, no, this is a paradigm shift, we're moving to this. And we actually ended up purging a lot of packages over this summer. So we got rid of about 40% of our packages. If you're wondering how we did this, we used a tool called Prune. so we could understand where these packages are being used, and if they're not being used in a package or in a policy, they're gone. That's how we decided to get rid of things. So now, tips for you all if you decide you want to do distributed teams. Things that we've learned, things that I think if you're considering distributed teams or setting up Jamf Pro for your environment, starting fresh, is really the first one is to identify your structure. You know, how are you structured? How many colleges do you support? I'm going to speak in academic terms, but this can be applicable to your environment. Is where are all the people at? Where are all your users at? What makes sense to structure everything there? What does your governance look like? There's a term. There's an academic term right there. What's your governance look like? What are people's expectations out of a Jamf enrollment? What are the things that they're looking for? And then figure out where the common ground is. We originally started off with saying we really want people to be able to run their own stuff and be able to do the things that they need to do in their environment.
Self-sufficient.
Yeah, and we've kind of come around to this idea of that we're all doing the same things. Duplicate effort.
Yeah. So let's try to reduce the amount of duplicate efforts.
Yeah, let's reduce this duplicate effort. Let's not do that. So let's find some common ground. If you're setting this up, find some common ground with your local people, figure out where things are at. I think the big thing that's really helped us, and I think what helps other people, is really lock down the life cycle management. And I'll be completely honest here, we're not 100% on everything that we do, that things are coming into Jamf, but we're like 98% of the way there. We have stuff coming in through TechSite, through our bookstore reseller, and we have that really well defined. We've worked pretty hard to establish relationships with our purchasing partners, as well as on the back end with our ISU surplus people, so we know when things are leaving campus and we can remove them from ASM and make sure that they're not included in there. And we're not getting support calls from someone in Tennessee or something like, hey, my Mac I've just bought is now in your Jamf server. We don't get those calls. So I would say if you're looking into doing that, make sure you really lock that down and getting stuff out of your Jamf environment as well as your ASM environment. So other tips. What is it that Jamf can actually do for you? Chad limited about talking about flat structure with Jamf. I would say it's a really good idea to have a complete understanding of what Jamf's capabilities are. You know, for us, we really utilize smart groups. We use pre-stage enrollment as a criterion smart groups. That's something that we thought we could really key in on. But then, well. Yeah, and it's worked out really well. But then there's certain limitations that you might want to consider, like for us as sites, you know, when we're spinning up 5,000 sites for everyone, you know, that gets really, especially at the site admin level when they're trying to manage 9 sites, it's really challenging. So just make sure you have a really good understanding of what Jamf can offer you, or however you want to, whichever products you decide to use. So the other part of this is we want this platform to be used by users. We want it to be used by IT staff. We want it to be used by our faculty and staff and students. But we can't lock it down so much that nobody can use it. But we also can't open it all the way up and let people kind of touch things that don't belong to them. So you need to kind of determine where the autonomy levels exist in your group. That's where we kind of structured it with the enterprise teams, the unit admins, and the site admins. That might be different for you. So I would highly suggest determining where those autonomy lines are, and then figuring out what stuff is handled centrally. So like the common good things, it kind of makes sense for that to fall on the central IT teams to manage. But maybe that's different for your environment. And the favorite one I have in here is avoiding chaos and tragedies. We don't want to get to parts where people are making accidental mistakes that are impacting everyone. This gets into the whole, we want to guardrail things off a little bit. So we want to make sure that we're not inviting problems. And so it's a lot of sitting down and talking to people, making sure that this is how we want to roll things out. And then the last thing I'll throw out here is with the technical options being the best things. So I've been to a lot of technical conferences and everyone's like, yeah, this is the next thing. This is the cool thing. Everyone should be doing this. If you're not doing this, you're not part of the cool club. But we all work in academia. Yeah. And we all know that even though there's technical options, they may not be the best of the options.
What does the end user see?
Yeah.
And what is the tech, the tier 1, tier 2, what are they seeing? And
Yeah.
does it make their job or life easier?
Yeah. So account for your culture at your institution. Don't get locked in on the perfect solution. And don't let perfect be the enemy of good. I really like that one too. So, acknowledgments. We're going to wrap this up. I see we're being stared at here.
Yep, that's right, yeah.
But we really like to acknowledge some folks. Shane Palmer, thanks for holding down the fort names. Thanks for agreeing to do some things for us. It's awesome. All our Iowa State colleagues and everyone, Apple admins at Iowa State. Matthew Nelson, he's my spouse. He's the one that keyed me in on GitHub Actions. It's all his fault. All the AutoPkg maintainers, folks out there with Gusto, Graham Pugh, dude, you're awesome. Thanks for making tools for the community. Everyone that's out here presented today and at past conferences, you guys all rock. Thank you so much. And as promised, QR code. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you so much. That was a great presentation. There are a lot of really great questions for you, but we are just about at 12 o'clock, so I just wanted to call out for people who may need to move on if you're online or anything like that. Does that QR code include a way to contact you if people have questions or want to discuss some of these topics?
Yeah, so if people, I'm on Mac admins. My handle's Technotica, the same as my GitHub. So if you want to ping me out there, go for it. I don't know what yours is, sorry.
My contact info, you can get a hold of us, I guess. It's the best thing to describe. We're very publicly available.
Yep.
Thank you.
Hit us up.
So maybe we'll do one top question, which is, how many staff do you have on the global admin level?
On the global, there's just 3 of us.
For running all of this, yeah, there's 3 enterprise admins.
Wow. All right. So I apologize we didn't get to all of those questions there, but just to keep things on time, thank you all for coming, and thank you for your great presentation.
Thank you for having us.
Yep,
Thanks.
thank you, everyone.